It's exciting. Well, can I say, Doug, so at least you're matching. You've got a jacket and the beanie today, so that's great.
Yeah.
Well done, you. So just checking, everybody's cool. I'm just getting we've got 19 participants. Is everybody well? Amy, I'm looking straight at you. Can you see and you can hear everything?
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. So Jess, batter up. Are you ready if I do a little bit of an intro, my queen?
Yes, thanks, Tara.
Okay, so team, let's begin. It is now, wherever one is around the world, we're actually at time. So colleagues, I am thrilled to welcome you to this double milestone event. Those of you that don't know who the random is with the blue flower, my name is Tara Brabazon. I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies at Charles Darwin University, and we are absolutely thrilled to welcome you all. Autopilot is recording this meeting. I'm thrilled for Otter. That's great. So colleagues, welcome to this double milestone session. It is a very, very special event, and it's a rare event, colleagues, because these are two quite odd milestones. We've got an interim milestone, and we've also got a mid-candidature milestone. These are rare, and so it's wonderful to share these quite odd, bespoke and intriguing milestones with you. I will commence obviously with an acknowledgement of country, acknowledging the traditional owners of all the lands on which we meet today, elders past, present and emerging, and any Indigenous colleagues with us today. And the plan for today is as follows. If you blink, you will miss it. We have two milestones. We've got the first presenter, the wonderful Jess, who's going to present for 15 minutes. Assessors will then present their questions for about 15 minutes, and then it's open to the entire floor to ask their questions for 15 minutes as well. And then we follow that same protocol for the wonderful Maive. So it's going to go very, very quickly. Let's get excited. Are you excited? Ronnie, are you excited? Oh, let's go for it. So with great pleasure, I want to commence the wonderful Jess's milestone. And it's also my pleasure to welcome our three assessors who I hope are on the call. I haven't quite checked yet, but we've got the wonderful, and Talitha, my wonderful co-supervisor, is here as well. Beautiful Carol is, lovely to see you both. So we've got three remarkable assessors who are joining us today for Jess's work: Dr. Mal Flack, Dr. Amy Johnson, and Dr. Leanne McRae. Three remarkable scholars, very diverse in their disciplinary protocols and approaches, and that diversity gives us some insight into the clarity and the power of the work that you are about to see. So Jess, over to you. Good luck, my angel, and let's see this really interesting research. Off you go, Jess.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you for doing the acknowledgement of country too for today's meeting. So my name's Jess, and I'll be presenting today on my research topic, the role of social safety for psychosocial wellbeing on enclave tourism islands. Before I start, I want to do a massive shout out to my three supervisors for getting me over the line earlier this year with a bit of a hiccup where I had to rewrite my entire research from January. That's Carol, Tara, and Talitha. Thank you so much. So today, I am going to give a quick run through of the overarching research aims, the underlying theory, and the proposed methods for my project. I'm very interested in your feedback, everyone's feedback, especially the assessors. Thank you for sharing your time with me to be here today and sharing your wisdom. So, why me? Why am I doing this particular topic? So I'm a psychologist and I have a background in education as a teacher. And this really developed an interest in environmental stresses, such as school experiences, workplace dynamics, early adversity, and the impacts that this can have on psychological well-being. So today you will see some images, some lovely images of my 2023 visit to Heron Island. Now, whilst on this holiday, I had a conversation with the manager that highlighted the invisible nature of mental health problems of this workforce. I was there for 4 days and I had no idea of the hidden psychosocial hazards of this workplace. So obviously the researcher in me, the educator in me wanted to know more. And I pondered, like, what are the available supports? What can be done about this difficulty that's being reported to me? And that's what I did whilst I was spending my time there. So the first thing I did was I came back and I realized that the resort island I'd been to is actually part of a specific workplace called an enclave tourism island. So enclave places are remote locations where we find ourselves in self-contained luxury, where all your needs are met in one place, but you're actually quite far away from the mainland and it's a very remote location. But whilst this is a leisure space for tourists, it's also another person's workplace. So there's residential living facilities that are in very physically small spaces at the centre of the island. Now, some enclave workplaces that you might be familiar with are, as I'm talking about today, resort islands, but this also could include cruise ships, ski resorts, anywhere where people go very far away to get away from community to enjoy themselves. And these workplaces face unique challenges related to staff wellbeing. So why is this important? Why should any of you care about this? I thought I could break this down into 3 areas. So biologically, people report being physically unwell in these workplaces, and they actually engage in problematic health behaviours such as substance use or sleep difficulties. The diet is changed whilst working in these places. There's also social impacts of living in remote, isolated, contained environments. The literature on cosmopolitanism was really important here. And this results in some personal impacts, that being in this small space for a prolonged period of time has psychological impacts, such as high levels of depression, anxiety, stress, isolation, and loneliness, and it's leading to high turnover rates. Now, this was just a very quick, brief overview, and despite these initial issues, no one has actually explored ways to improve conditions for this workforce. It hasn't happened yet. So to dive deeper, why is this research important? I thought it would be helpful today to put it into kind of an ecological model for people. So first of all, I'll explain this outside blue circle. This is going to be the broader environmental, global, cultural, economic, all the different factors around this workplace that can be having an impact. So first of all, I want to bring to your attention the COVID-19 pandemic and the recovery from that. The tourism industry actually shut down during the lockdown periods, and people lost their jobs. It was a really frightening time for people in this sector. And when they returned to work, they were the first point of contact for overseas travellers. So contracting COVID-19 when it was really scary was a real threat for these people, as well as the threat of job insecurity, where we saw contract and seasonal agreements become popularised, where people's their actual contract could be terminated easily with the next lockdown. So there was this, it was a very unstable time for this workplace. There's also generally global war and conflict happening that affects tourists and workers alike. This workplace is actually classified as vulnerable. They're younger in age, they have less life experience, and mostly from migrant backgrounds. And it's important to note here the backstage, front stage role delegations. So what I mean by this is there's great literature on this about how on these enclave sort of workplaces, there's front stage workers such as management, reception, waiter staff, then there's backstage workers. And the backstage workers are your maintenance, gardeners, cleaning staff, and people that are in the backstage, they have sort of restricted access to the tourism space, the beautiful space of the island. And this causes some segregation within the workplace, which can be challenging. Now, all of these things together with a rise in the cost of living, isolation from family and friends, a lack of mental health care services. So what was casually reported to me was actually there's no mental health care services. That's how they ended up talking to me at length about it. And after COVID, we actually saw an actual shortage in the tourism workforce because people were looking for more permanent, stable positions. So it was just too unstable to return. So we actually have a shortage in this sector at the moment. So what does this lead to? This leads to really long hours and a workforce that is really in dire need of support. So this is more globally and the larger literature. So what does this actually mean for enclave tourism islands here in Australia. Now, this literature was much harder to come by. I actually found very little specifically to this population. So some of the literature is from the broader Australian tourism research, but overall what we think we know is that there's poor mental health, emotional exhaustion, high turnover rates. It was reported to me between 6 and 8 months is a normal stint out working on these places.
Wow.
Poor work and leisure boundaries, because your work, your leisure, your home, your safe, all of that space is within a very small physical area. Low job satisfaction, yet you're working in one of the most beautiful places in the world, which I find very interesting. High workplace stress. People report feeling very lonely in these workplaces, and this all culminates to lead to some maladaptive coping strategies such as substance use. They do have higher rates of substance use, not just in general, but also substance use whilst at work, which is an interesting finding. So what can be done? We need some kind of solution. That's what the bullseye is about. Safe Work Australia recently in 2022 released new codes regarding psychosocial hazards, which is wonderful. And they actually listed remote workplaces as a physical and a psychosocial hazard for people working in these places. And this really highlighted to me a call to action. So from my previous research on the protective effects of social safety, I'm interested in the implications for introducing social safety into remote workplaces like enclave tourism islands and what impact this may have. So to further explain that, you might be thinking, what's this social safety about? Let's talk some more about that. So the founding literature that I'll be using for this research, I've actually chosen 3 because they all work so well together to support what I'm trying to do. So the first one is attachment theory. Second one is polyvagal theory, and the third one is social baseline theory. Now, attachment theory, it posits that secure relationships between individuals, such as between employees and management, are actually crucial for enhancing well-being and productivity by building this stable base of emotional support. So when people feel this secure base, they can co-regulate senses of threat, such as stress. Now, polyvagal theory, it emphasizes the role of the autonomic nervous system in social behavior, suggesting that environments that promote safety and connection can reduce stress responses and enhance overall well-being. And they really facilitate this lovely rest and digest state when we're in our social engagement system. Now, the third one, social baseline theory, it suggests that all human social networks serve as a baseline for managing stress and conserving energy, highlighting the importance of strong interpersonal connections for psychosocial safety and optimal functioning. So when we're in groups of people that we feel safe and connected and attuned with, then we return to a baseline state. Now, all of these theories point to something that I find very important, which is an element of social safety. There's a social element. We need other people in order to restore this kind of baseline. So social safety refers to the creation of environments and relationships that promote feelings of security and support whilst reducing stress and enhancing overall well-being and productivity. Now, it's important to note here that this is an internally felt sense of safety. We can be surrounded by people that we know and trust, but also be feeling super anxious and stressed and awful at the same time. This is an internal sense of, I'm okay and I'm at peace. The benefits of this, if we can get this right, are reduced stress, overall well-being, increased productivity, improved mental health, stronger interpersonal relationships, and especially for this research, better employee retention and more supportive and resilient workplace environments. So I think this is really important. But I want to know more. These are my research questions. So the first, obviously, I've already scrapped number 7 because I've realized my timeline's shrinking. So that I want to know, first of all, the current state. As I said, there's all this lovely literature around tourism spaces altogether, but I want to know specifically for enclave tourism islands. What's the current state of mental health and well-being on these places? Second, I want to explore the unique characteristics of enclave tourism islands and how this contributes, such as, job isolation, job demands, limited access to support services. Now, the third one, what are they currently doing? And does this work? Maybe they're already doing some wonderful things and I could contribute further, but that wasn't what was reported to me. But worth exploring. The fourth one, what do employees personally do to cope with stress? Do they have coping mechanisms? The fifth question, what is the current organisational structure and the leadership approaches, and how does this impact on the well-being of their workers? Now, the sixth involves searching through the literature. So I'll use all of this data that I've collected with the first few research questions, and I want to discover what is known about increasing social safety and what organisational factors and leadership styles support this, and how do we apply that specifically to enclave tourism island spaces. Right. How am I going to do this? Before I go through this, I want to make it very clear that this is not clinical research. It's applied explorative research. I will be collecting survey data. This is data on well-being, satisfaction at work, turnover intention. I'd like to know about their substance use and other coping mechanisms, isolation and loneliness levels, emotional exhaustion, and as well as their social safety. How socially safe do they feel currently? I'd like to do interviews. And these will be conducted, or maybe focus groups. It depends what the timeline allows for. These will be done on location by myself, and expenses will be negotiated by myself and the Enclave Tourism Island. Now, I would like to take some observational data, such as photographs, not of people, but just of living spaces, leisure facilities, maintenance areas, other such amenities, because I think that this would be very helpful for understanding and also conveying the cultural geography of the space that I'm exploring. At no stage will I be participating in the community or location. I'm simply observing and asking about their subjective experience. So what will I do with this data? The survey data, I will run some inferential statistics such as t-tests, ANOVAs, regression analysis. I'll be using this to examine the relationships between variables. Now, the interview data will be transcribed by Otter AI and analysed using in vivo. Now, the combination of the survey data and the interviews will allow me to analyse the research questions more comprehensively. That's what I'm hoping to do. I can use the quantitative data to look for the patterns and trends, and then the qualitative data to understand the context and meaning and get this more richness to the conclusions that I draw. Now, the final stage is to develop guidelines for how to improve working conditions for those working on remote enclave tourism islands. This is a really unique working environment that requires attention and support to align with those workplace health and safety guidelines I was describing before. Okay, so how am I going to do this? Kind of lost a year with PhD with something else. We've reconfigured from January. We're already in May. Right. Ethics application will go in straight after this milestone as soon as I can. And whilst awaiting ethics, I can write the study up, write up the intro and methods. With ethics approval, I can then conduct the on-site data collection. Now, ideally, data collection will be complete by the end of the year, and transcribing and data analysis can be completed over that Christmas break. Theme checking interviews will occur early in 2025, leaving me time to write up the findings for publication by May 2025. The development of the guidelines will kind of happen between May and August next year, with concurrent review of the literature at the same time. This leaves me 6 months to culminate and submit my thesis by the 28th of February 2026. Now, I am aware that the proposed timeline appears difficult, but I'm determined to finish this. And I really think that it's doable in the time that I've set. And I feel like I've proven this by overcoming supervision challenges at the end of last year and redeveloping the entire project in 3 months. So I really think that this is doable, and it's also very important to me. I'm quite passionate about this topic. So that's me. I'm really interested in your questions and feedback, and thank you all for listening.
So the first thing we need to do is just go, Jess, you are a legendary human being. I mean, you know, the commitment, the energy, the drive is incredibly important. We talk about the strengths of women to overcome adversity. Jess, bring it. I love it, Jess. Bring it. Bring it. Jess is embodying that. We're absolutely thrilled with you, Jess, and it's a powerful topic. Now, colleagues, we're grabbing Mal. We're trying to find one of our assessors as we go, but we've got the legendary Amy. Thanks, darling. We've got the legendary Amy and Leanne in. So this is so exciting. And Amy, I was just riveted on your face through the whole gig. You're as excited as I am. So are you happy if Amy and Leanne, we sort of go questions one and then another, and wait for the legendary Mal to arrive? Great stuff. Amy, do you want to kick us off, girlfriend?
Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and listen to your project. I think particularly in the documentation as well, you really effectively sold how important this project is and why there's such a great need. One thing I wasn't clear about, and I was hoping you could expand on, is in the data collection around the participants. Like, I just wasn't sure how you were going to get access to them. Are you talking to staff and providers or just staff? You know, what might that look like?
Okay, so it would look like going out and conducting interviews with staff and with leadership team. And we would get this really at the end of the day, at the end of the research, the enclave island that I'm doing the research with will get guidelines specifically written for their psychosocial wellbeing of their workforce. So the island that I've particularly spoken to about this would be very happy. They think that's a very worthwhile use of their time too. But there's also, we could also discuss vouchers for time, but I don't really think that that's needed, Amy, in this instance, because they're really reaching out for help, and I feel that I can support them in this.
Yeah, fantastic. I suppose that was leaning into that other thing about, have you already got those relationships? Because I suppose when I was reading research question 1 about that current state of mental health, if I was thinking about being a enclave provider, I'm going, oh, is Jess going to come in here and write a document that says I'm super damaging my employees? You know, is Jess going to come in and give me this long list of things my employees can now kind of take case with me about? So I probably, yeah, it's good to understand that relationship you already have with them is there and already underway.
Yeah, this was work I was already thinking of doing aside to my other PhD topic, because a local island here really reached out to me, and they, as I put in the document that you've read, they offered me a job on the spot, saying, can you just come and we'll pay for everything, can you just come and help us, because people are really unhappy and segregated, and it's kind of not a very nice place to be, but we're all stuck here together. And I thought, well, and so then I started looking out to other island workplaces and getting very similar reports, Amy. So I thought, well, why don't we do this overarching document so everybody can pick it up and use it?
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's really lovely. And then just finally, before passing back to Leanne, more of a comment, because that's what academics do. But just a suggestion when you're doing the research, some of that data around other enclosed workplace scenarios, like I'm thinking mining sites, Navy ships, all of those sorts of places, they've done a lot of work. And obviously there's some difference there, you know, in the sense of their permanent employees and all of those sorts of things. But there could be a fair body of work in there to draw for in that workplace dynamic.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. There's this whole literature behind it too about how this specific workforce have to look and feel happy all the time because they're selling a dream. Which is different to those other workplaces. It's a whole different psychological element to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. I'll pass to Leanne now. Thanks, Jess.
Oh,
thank you, Amy.
Isn't Amy a legend? Amy, you're absolutely brilliant. And it's sort of not so much a FIFO workforce, more of a fly in and just sort of manage. So it's a fee workforce. Now, Leanne, we spent about 10 years teaching what happens when other people's leisure becomes your workplace. Now, I don't know where you'd like to take us now, but go for it, because this project is, we dreamt of a project as fabulous as this. Take us through, gorgeous Leanne.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and thank you, Jess. Really wonderful project, really well presented. It's going to be really great work that you're doing here, and I'm very excited that you're doing it. So I'm about to ruin everybody's day, so I apologize for that up front, but it's what I tend to do in these things. But I do that with great love and respect. So the first thing I want to say is, and this is just a provocation, okay? Is any work on well-being ever in the interest of the worker?
Ooh.
And, you know, that's a cognitive shift in your brain a little bit, and you don't have to take it on, but it is something to consider, and something that may just provoke the work a little bit. Because what I really enjoy is that you're very strong in, obviously in the psychology space, you're very strong on the support and the networks and understanding those workplace dynamics and how that impacts on mental health and how those infrastructures can be challenged and how they can be shifted and changed. And I think that's really strong thread in your work, and it's going to come through very strongly. And that's the space where you're going to be able to create the outcomes that you want. But I think you also need a strong theory of work about the nature of work, and in particular, the nature of itinerant work. And obviously, Guy Standing is going to be a theorist that you're going to, you know, I'm sure Tara's already shoved books at you. Also, Barbara Ehrenreich.
Yes.
I would suggest as well to take a look at, because I really think there's this really kind of nice confluence that and I was really happy to see you do the blue circle, the global context of where this is sitting, because I got a little bit concerned that you were making an enclave of your research.
Ooh,
and I think that's got to be carefully monitored and managed as you move through this, I think. And I think the theory of work is going to help you do this. So this idea that I really like that you're working through and understanding, this idea of concealing the messiness. And I think that's that's what these background workers are doing, what these itinerant workers are doing. They are in the messiness. They are embodying the messiness in an exchange for everybody on the island not experiencing the messiness, the trauma. They're taking on, they're at the exchange, the actual economic exchange here is the worker is taking on the trauma of the global economy so the tourist doesn't have to.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that is really the kind of, I think, potentially the crunchiness that's going to help fill out your work. So it's not really a question as such, more of a commentary on what you're doing, which I think is really great. Do you have any sense of what maybe potentially within your work, the difference between safeness and safety? Is that something you're going to be thinking about?
Yeah, it's definitely worth exploring. So when we're exploring social safeness, social safety, it's the internal mechanism, not so much the environment. But of course, you also have to look at the environment and how safe that actually is. For example, you can't say, well, we need calm down spaces for people that might be dysregulated when there's nowhere to go, actually space-wise. So we need to actually look at both elements, definitely.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. I think it's a bit tangential, but there's some interesting work being done by Julia Morris on schools and furniture, which I know sounds weird, but it's kind of like the same thing where you don't have a space to go, but the space you're in can be used differently. So the classroom can be configured in particular ways to facilitate particular students. So even though it's obviously not directly related to what you're doing, it's an interesting way of thinking about how space can be managed and monitored and changed and shaped when you don't have space, when you don't have the ability to shift anywhere else. So that might be useful for you. So I'd also probably like you potentially to think about, what does flexibility mean, particularly because that's very often the trade-off, isn't it? That is centralized within this economy. The idea that you're gaining something precious in your flexibility in taking on this itinerant work. And is it actually flexible once you get there? And in what way does that flexibility manifest? Because also it's workers being very responsive and flexible to the tourists on site, but they don't have that potentially maybe that same flexibility in their own backstage management of their daily lives and their working lives. So that's probably all I have to say for the moment.
But let's open that out to Jess, because there's some provocative questions there. And I mean, Jess, the comment about well-being, I think, is dead crucial. I mean, it's like the happiness industry. You know, we're all aiming for happiness. We're all aiming for well-being. Well, what if well-being is simply a prophylactic to keep workers working in late capitalism? So, Jess, have you got a commentary on that?
Yeah, I really do. I thought about when I realized nothing had been done, because all workforces have some kind of psychosocial safety document. Most of them do. When I realized there was nothing, it really brought Leanne's point home then, that there was no motivation to do it for this workforce, because they move. They're so transient in nature, this workforce. There was no real staying power to say, well, hang on, you need to support us in this. So no one's actually looked at it before. But the new psychosocial hazards in the workplace health and safety document kind of means we need to look at this. We need to look at it for everyone. Yeah. Great point. Should we go back to Amy? We might do Amy, Leanne, and then open it up. I can see colleagues are ready to rumble here, including every member of Jess's extended family who are with us today, and we're incredibly grateful and happy to see her fabulous family here. Amy, where do you want to take us now?
To concur with what Leanne said, you so beautifully summarised many thoughts that had been floating around in the ether that I could not vocalize as well as you did. The other thing that came to me as I was thinking about this is that idea of sort of, and we've been talking about space, but because the workers are seasonal, you know, this idea that they get taken away and treated in this area and then sort of like spat out back home. And that well-being is almost seen as something they have to deal with, but they're not supported. The people who support them in their lives, their friends and family, aren't exposed necessarily to what life is like on the island for them. So you almost this space where the island is like you're hinting at, and I, again, not really question, but really thinking about not just who they are on the island, but what how they are afterwards. You know, that transitional period where they're coming in and out of the workforce.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and this is all stuff we don't know about this workforce. We don't know. I really couldn't find anything much on what is the experience of people even after they leave. So that's another thing that we will put into the ethics application too, is when people sign up at the beginning giving their original survey data, we'll have a box there asking, even if they leave, would you mind if we followed up and just asked why? Is that something? Can we send you a little survey about why? Because we're curious about that too.
Absolutely. No, I think, and I think that would be really interesting. And as well, just for that bigger employee retention issue, you know, I'm really curious about where the motivation is. Is this actually the enclave tourism operators? Is it just about retention? And so they want to do this, but only to an extent that it helps keep staff on. It's not actually about the staff well-being itself. And so then I'm really curious about the guidelines you develop. And there was a comment in the chat about the implementing the recommendations and implementing the guideline. And I think that would be really interesting, even as a hint at the kind of towards the end of your research, is what do the operators actually think about those guidelines? You know, do they feel they're implementable and are something they might take on?
Yeah, absolutely, Amy. And the overarching feel I got from the manager I spoke to was she also has to live and work in this environment with her partner, and it's not a very happy place to be. So if you don't have a good day at work, you then have to go and spend your evening in the staff room with them all. So how do we shift that? That's what she wanted. They seemed very motivated to sort of get some change.
Oh, that's strong, Jess. That's really strong. Thank you, Amy, for that. That will change the direction of this thesis. Your advice there is absolutely brilliant, Amy. And Leanne, just crossing to you, and then we go to our wonderful questions. People are queuing for questions. Leanne, just a disciplinary commentary here about tourism studies. Now, I've pushed, as my wonderful Talitha and Carol, my co-supervisors, have realised, I've pushed a lot of tourism studies and island studies in Jess's direction have I been aberrant there? What do you think is the role in disciplinary terms of, say, tourism studies, island studies? Is that merely contextual in such a discussion, and we need to focus on theories of work?
No, not at all. That was the next place I was going, was tourist studies and theory of tourism, because, you know, the past is a foreign country, right? So
Differently.
So what we have here, I think, and this is my initial reactions to this kind of things, is that obviously we have, you know, tourism is built around expectations. So, you know, yeah. And particularly if you're going to an enclave resort experience, you're not going, you know, it's an experience. You have a whole series of expectations, right? As a tourist. And it is always the struggle of the provider to meet those expectations. And very rarely do they.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do, because it exists in our imagination, right? So I think you're going to need definitely to have a theory of tourism and to understand the relationship between tourists and tourism and the role of workers in providing and meeting those expectations, and that it almost always fails.
So, Leanne, are you saying that Bennett's front stage, we should be bringing that back, noting it was early 90s? Is that still a value here?
Yeah, I do. I think just because it's the 90s, man, doesn't mean we should, you know, ignore it. But I think there's also, you know, obviously you're going to take that as a springboard. You're going to move it forward. You're going to complicate it. You're going to, you know, contextualize it within an enclave experience. But I think tourism and tourist studies is going to be the space where you can nut out and think through the ways in which the expectations of tourists are the burden of the workers in the space. And that's how you're going to make the link to post-work, and how you're going to make that work theory work for you, I think. And I was thinking of, it's a burden of risk, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a burden of risk. We exist in this really risky, terrifying space. You noted all of those things that are real, not just for workers, which is where I'm going to. It's also real for the tourists. The tourists are going to the enclave, so they don't have to deal with this, and instead the worker is dealing with it.
Oh, wow.
That's the exchange. And you have to understand tourism and the role of expectations and experience to understand how that is being deployed and activated, operationalized in the working space, and what impact that then has on workers and their emotional state and well-being as a part of, you know, tourism, neoliberalism, post-work. That's the blue.
Right.
The blue circle.
I don't know about everybody else on this call. I feel so much smarter after listening to Amy and Leanne. It's beyond belief. So, Jess, have you got a commentary on disciplinary protocols before we open it up for 10 quick minutes and then on we go?
Yeah, I do. Leanne, thank you so much for your feedback today. What you said then about the expectations of tourists, and that actually equals the burden on workers, the burden of risk. That's really important. That's something that I'm going deep diving after this meeting this morning, because that's really important. And that's something that had come up because the manager said that they often have to deal with people's emotional outbursts because things aren't going exactly the way they want them, and they've sort of stepped off this boat onto this enclave tourism space going, well, I should be happy. Why aren't I happy? Paid all this money. Quickly, hurry up, make me happy and relaxed. And that's not exactly how it works. But the workers there, the front stage workers, have to hold this. They have to hold space for that. But they don't have any specific training in how to do that.
Absolutely stunning. So there's something in a theorization of displacement, Jess, that we as a family might talk about. The displacement is what Leanne and beautiful Amy have given us. Amazing. So, colleagues, I'll open it up, and I'm seeing the legendary Woodruff with us. Hello, you are a superstar. Asked to unmute and ask us fabulous questions. Superstar, lovely to see you.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to ask a question. I just wanted to ask about, excuse me, the cultural aspects of the workers. Normally when we go on a holiday, we're engaging with people from a different culture or coming across a different situation than the culture we're from. So I'm just wondering how your interpretation of the data in your analysis will cater for understanding different cultures within that set of participants. So do you have some kind of cross-cultural plan for your analysis? Thank you. That's it.
And she
That
drops
was
the
an
mic and walks away. Jess.
Yeah, that was an excellent question. I'm so glad you asked it because it has come up, as I've noted, that they're quite, some of the employees are quite marginalised, and very many of them are from migrant backgrounds, and that can also sort of bring in its own little cliques in the home space within the enclave tourism island. And having a cross-cultural plan will be really, really important when we're looking at data, and even when I'm engaging in interviews or focus groups. So that will actually need to be its own specific element of the research, a bit of time put aside to actually understand the different cultures that I'll be working with over there, which I don't know yet. That's definitely on my plan. Thank you so much for that question.
It's a great question, fantastically important, and adds to the enclave. So what are the communication systems within the enclave? Absolutely brilliant. Now, other questions that you would like to ask? I can see that the wonderful Carol is offering a fantastic question. So Carol, do you want to speak on this? And then I might go to the legendary Suze and read Suze's out. But Carol, what comments would you like to offer to our Jess? What a triumph she's been today.
Yeah, I think it just came up for me actually based on another PhD candidate's project, and that but this idea of like teacher portrait and sort of exploring that, and it was something Leanne was talking about. I was like, oh, that really resonates with I think what Jess is really tapping into, and it's just this great experience of like we learn as we go, forever throughout our careers. And I learned this thing and I was like, actually this really applies. So I guess I just put a note there so that we've got it documented. And I think it'd be great for us to discuss as a team and with Jess and explore how that might fit in, into the overall picture, because there's this idea of the tourist portrait and what they bring then with them and their expectations and so forth, and how that then impacts in this dynamic system. And then you've got the workers who have their own kind of portrait and idea of what it would be like, and then the need that these things have to adjust, there's expectation and then reality and so forth. So it's actually a really complex dynamic, and then it then taps into that idea of the tourist being expected to take on the workers, to be expected to kind of take on or take away what the tourists are escaping from. So yeah, I just thought it might be worth exploring, because there's a lot of literature sort of sitting in that I've just become aware of. So yeah, that's it's not really a question for Jess, it's just a comment and something, I don't know. Leanne's smiling. I hope I'm kind of tapping into what you're, okay.
Oh, it's fantastic. So Jess, you want to offer a commentary, and then I'll capitalize on what is in the comments, and then we'll move to the next presentation. Talk, Jess.
All I have to say on that is I think that we've discovered a whole nother chapter for my PhD from this discussion this morning, and I really thank you all.
Oh, it's fantastic. And can I say, you'll see in the comments, which I'll save for you, Jess, both Mary and Suze have offered some very significant commentary about ethnography, particularly interestingly on mining sites. So there is some resonance through the 1980s, obviously, for all the people from the People's Republic of Western Australia here. We're used to the mining FIFO experience and the isolation, the drug use, the drinking, and the challenges of that particular FIFO are unknown to us. But as you've said, Jess, you need to focus on the differentiation of the leisure-based workers rather than mining. But there may be some value there, I think, darling.
Yeah, I do believe so. Yeah.
And look, I will finish with the final person. Megan, I will go to you, the lady in red. I know she's got a throat that feels like the bottom of a cockie's cage, but you've just left one of these enclave islands. You've left Norfolk Island, which, you know, tourism is really the primary gig of what's going on there, and it's highly isolated. Have you got any views to our Jess, as someone who has actually lived as a worker on a tourist island?
Absolutely. Jess, I think this is such a valuable study, and I can see that this can be drawn across to so many different areas. It's not just FIFO, but it's also military. And I'm from a military background and grew up in Papua New Guinea in an army barracks. So I always choose to live in rural and remote places. I've moved to Ipswich, hate the sound of the traffic. I just want to go back to Norfolk Island. But it's the difficulties for families as well. So what I'm hearing and seeing is some sort of an index, like a livability index, that is drawn across into all of these different areas to help employers help also families of the workers, because it's often the families, and I'm speaking from personal experience, that have to cop. We soak up a lot of the abuse or the mental health issues, and who supports us. So this is really fascinating, Jess. Well done to you. And well done at pulling it together so quickly too. I know the struggle.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you for your comment. I've written that down. I'm going to look into that after this as well, because I hadn't considered, because when I've been doing this research, the families of the workers seem so far away. Yeah. So even as a researcher, I was doing that and I had my own bias. I'm like, well, no, it's all about them.
Well said, you two. And Talitha and Carol, the notion of an index may be something that we can deploy. So to both my co-supervisors, are you happy? I think we've got a lot of fabulousness out of that. Are you both comfortable?
Can I put my ethics hat on for a sec? Is that okay?
You certainly can, Leanne McRae.
Just two things just for you to think about, Jess, when you're putting in your application. Firstly, Otter AI, where do they store their data? So yeah, if it's in a US server, you might want to think about that one. And if you're doing an enclave focus groups and interviews, think about the identifiability of that even if they're anonymized, you've got a closed group, they're going to know, you're going to know who everyone is, and everyone's going to know who everyone is. So just think about that in terms of how you put your application together. Good job.
Yeah, really good points. Thank you, Leanne.
That's tremendous. So firstly, before and Maive, darling, why don't you pop your PowerPoint up while I sort of move into your presentation? Can we all please firstly thank the legendary Jess for a really stunning presentation. I would like to thank Carol and Talitha for being my magnificent co-supervisors. It is the highlight of my week to spend time with these remarkable women. And I would really like to thank Amy and Leanne. You have changed this thesis, colleagues. You have changed this thesis. And I think the trope of displacement is now going to become the big thing for this thesis. So I'm not sure what milestones are meant to do, but I think you've just seen what a milestone is meant to do. So it's my great pleasure now to hurtle to our second featured presentation of the day. Yes, you want more? We give you more. And of course, now we move to the wonderful Maive Collett and her milestone. And this is the mid thesis milestone. These are what I often describe as the difficult middle child milestones. You've sort of done just enough to know what you don't know. So they're fun, they're chaotic, they're brilliant. And I'm really, really proud of Maive. And I'd like to acknowledge her co-supervisor is here, Professor Jamie Quinton, a very, very handsome man, I believe, is with us today. So Jamie, it's wonderful working with you and working with Maive. And I would like to welcome really the dream team for the assessors here. And I can see they're all here, which is amazing. the legendary Dr. Susanna Chamberlain. I'm so thrilled that Suze is with us, remarkable scholar who is also writing remarkable fiction, and that's going to become important shortly. Dr. Angela Jones, or should I say Dr. Angela Jones, who completed her first thesis in cultural studies, and her second thesis was a creative-led project. A remarkable novel was created, Doctor as you do. And of course, Dr. Leanne McRae has decided to stay with us because she sort of has to, because she has to be nice to me and I have to be nice to her. Leanne, thank you for doing the double dip on this one. So we'd like to now hand over to the legendary Maive and colleagues. Again, same protocol, 15 minutes for the presentation, 15 minutes for the assessors, and 15 minutes for you. Maive, over to you, my queen.
Hello all. Thank you, Tara, for your lovely welcome, and great to see you, Jamie, and wonderful to have Leanne back again for continuity and lots of other things. I know you, Leanne, so it'll be great. And welcome to two new assessors, Ange and Susanna. So very, very, very happy about that. So today's presentation, someone will give me a wave when I'm approaching my 15 minutes. Thank you, Megan. So navigating the layers, psychogeography and sonic landscapes, 1975 King's Cross through ultra-realism and feminism. So just to be clear, in the last year, I was concentrating on psychogeography and sonic landscapes. It wasn't the year where I went full on with ultra-realism and feminism, although feminism is kind of the blank slate, and that's something I'm looking forward to assessor feedback about, because that'll be in 2024 that I'll be writing those. And yes, so ultra-realism is something I never really put down. I appear to put it down, but I never really put it down because it's kind of constant, and whatever's fresh, I'm wanting to read in that area. So thank you all for coming. My voice has decided to.
Very attractive. It's like a bold and the beautiful, Maive. You're doing well. Oh.
Thank you, Tara. Oops. Here we go. So I'm doing a creative-led PhD. This is just a quick general introduction for people who may not know about this. So my exegesis is the 40,000 word minimum, and I think I agree with you, Tara, we will creep way past 40,000 words just on what we've already discussed. Thank you. My artifact is a crime novel set in 1975 King's Cross in Australia. The mitigating journal, well, I took my little space opportunity today to rewatch my COC, and and that was really, really worthwhile thing to do, coming into today and looking at what am I doing, how's it going. And what I have realized about the mitigating journal, because Leanne asked questions about that last time, some of your questions, Leanne, haven't been answered at all because it wasn't my focus for this year. On the other hand, I think that I have a growing understanding of the mitigating journal, not so much one that's grounded in theoretical application, but more one that's what do I think and what do I feel. And I think its best use is going to be demonstrating links that connect us between the exegesis and the artifact. I think there's a history of journaling in creative-led practice, and there's a history of journaling as part of qualitative research. But what do I think this journal could do that isn't necessarily part of what other journals do? That is what I think it can do. So I appreciate all your questions on that. So my planned chapters, which I'm just going to briefly mention, just to contextualize where sonics and psychogeography fit. Ultra-realism will be first, feminism will be second. There is a lot of work done on ultra-realism, including in my article that I've written, but it's not work that's in a written up, well orchestrated chapter. The feminism is very blank slate, so very open to ideas on approaching feminism, and also have those ideas banked up that Gail gave me a year ago when we did this. Creative led PhD, that's my chapter on methodology. I've got about half of that written, and I think some of that will probably cut, but at the same time, there is some chunky work in there that will be useful, and I will keep that. And I see the creative-led PhD more as a matrix now. And I think that understanding has helped me a lot, because I'm no longer trying to pin it into, is it research-led or is it creative-led? I'm more looking at, the whole matrix at different iterative moments fit to this PhD. So I feel like I've developed in that thinking without going back into a lot of work on it. Place will be really important. It's something that I've been looking at as a creative writer for over a long period of time, but I haven't done that theoretical research that will make that sing. So I think that won't be this year. I think that'll be next year. Tara's looking at me there, so I'm not sure what that, oh, she's giving me the nod. Okay, we're good. So just to throw in, and I will mention it later, I have done extensive work on Gantt charts to develop what I will do, currently part-time, and I intend to have the whole thing finished. I have a little post-it note on the corner of my screens, 18th of April, 2026. So I feel very clear about that, and I put in a contingency plan for if things don't go right. I've still got time, a couple of months, in fact, to pull that together by the date that I want. Psychogeography, I'm going to go through that. Sonics and second person, they're both very important to me. I'll be dealing with that. The artifact, I've sent some work on the artifact to the assessors, and I've just started to open up a new chapter. And my new chapter is on Callum Park. And I'm really excited about that, and I've been working on that. I just want to let you know, in terms of the presentation that we're doing today, I will be going in great detail into my SOC, but it won't be now. It'll be at the end of the 2 layers that I'm going to look at. Psychogeography, wow. Well, Tara introduced me to this. It's been mind-blowing. Firstly, psychogeography is a huge, huge body of work. So I think the first thing that I did was try to really hone down on what would I not do. And that was one of Jamie's big contributions to the last year. He has kept asking me all the way through, what are you leaving out? Why are you leaving it out? What are you not doing? So I would say with psychogeography, I chose to leave out photography, which is a massive part of psychogeography. My reasons for that was I'm not a great photographer, but my part of that is it's not something I have a massive passion for. And it's interesting that sonics has really flourished in the PhD, but the visuals are not my favourite thing in the world. They exist and I appreciate that, but they're not where I am going in my work. So, so that was why I left that out. So psychogeography, the guts of that is just to say that it is about the impact of an environment on one's emotions and affect. That is how I've treated it. I've looked at feminist psychogeography. That was important to me. And the thing that has most resonated with me, I would say, is literary psychogeography. And the more I've thought about that, in fact, post sending my work off over the last few weeks, my work was going to fit into that category of literary psychogeography. The novel will fit right there. So it's a really important resonance that I'm looking at psychogeography. And in fact, I've always been writing literary psychogeography. I just didn't know that that's what I was doing. So I think it's been illuminating to look at that. And one other critical thing is that I looked at Guy Debord as one of my, theoreticians that have helped to a history of psychogeography. And that was important to me because there's a strong Marxism that's behind his work. And then there's a strong Marxism that is in my exegetical and creative arc. So to me, that's the really deep theoretical connection between psychogeography and my work. And that creates part of the SOC. So I'll go back to that later. So yeah, here's an example of my photography, cross-pointing on that. And this is the Butler Stairs. So the Butler Stairs forms part of the bridge, if you like, between Woolloomooloo at the base of the stairs and King's Cross at the top. And what separates the area is this massive sandstone cliff. And the sandstone cliff sort of is a metaphor almost for working class people who lived traditionally in the bottom in Woolloomooloo, and people with more money who lived, more class, more money, who tended to live in King's Cross, which is also given various other names. But the thing that I find fun, and I love to have some fun in the PhD, is if you have a look up there at that house that you can see at the top of the stairs, that is where my murder takes place. That very exact house. I've never been in there. I've just imagined that the murder takes place in there. And something I found that was a critical part of the first chunk of novel is that the body is found, the male body is found at what I'm calling the back of that house, double-story house there. And when I came to actually walk up the Butler Stairs, when you go up to there is no backyard. It's absolutely fenced in with barbed wire fences, and there is no way the body could have been found in that area. So I thought that was a fantastic example of, my research excursion, which I took in November of last year, and my research excursion, and thanks, Tara, and the reality that I found. So it's good to go and have a trip in the area that you're writing about. There's a 3-second photo of the El Alamein fountain, which has a very strong role in the novel. My sonic taxonomy, and Tara, you'll probably grimace, so I'll just make space for you grimacing. I actually used Tara's article, which is 2023 article, The Auditory Academic Transforming the Soundscape of Scholarship. So in that article, Tara makes 2 diagrams, and I used the first one, information, audience, platform. And that in this era of the 220s, you would go in that exact pattern. And so what I've done was I had all these disparate bits that I really wanted to include. Oral history of King's Cross, talking about the podcast, which was important, but individual podcasts as well, and then a range of other things. So one of the ways that I used the mitigating journal in the last year was the death of Rodriguez, which was a songwriter, and he's quite well known, but very alternative in the period of time of the 70s. So I wanted to include that. I wanted to say these are things that are really important to me. They all make the novel, and they all are also part of the exegetical thinking that has gone on. So I was like tortured, and I went back to this morning anyway, I won't go on too long about it, but what I want to say there was I had to try and bring together a range of disparate things. So I looked at sonics, I researched quite widely to try to come to this. And in the end, I thought about E.P. Thompson. I tried that. It didn't really work, even though I liked the philosophy of it. But what did work, I think, is to have used those 3 ideas that Tara put forward, and then I added a 4th. So the 4th was kind of social commentary or a contextualization, or how to make it 1975. So that was just the way that I used the 3, but came up with my own 4th, which was a bit flexible across the things that I was categorizing and classifying. But it was a workable relationship that I ended up with the chapter. And before that, it was very difficult to make the chapter cohesive. Okay. On we go. Part of the sonic taxonomy was second person, and second person is a thing that I am doing in the novel. So what that means is it's the author using the word you to talk to the audience. So for me, that comes from my studies of Monica Fludenik. It's something I did in the Masters as well. It'll be something I will keep on going with for life because I'm absolutely fascinated by it. So just recently, I've found a novel called You by Carolyn Kepney. So I've had time since I wrote my piece to have read that and have watched it on Netflix. And I'm not doing what she's doing. But I found it really fascinating to know what she's doing, and she's writing best-selling novels. So I'm making no assumption there, but what I'm doing is similar to other work which breaks the fourth wall. It's where you interrupt the idea of the narrative and you speak directly to the person who's reading it. Okay. Okay, I haven't got to my significant contribution to knowledge, which is the most important thing, but I have done a lot of thinking about this. I'll just get rid of that. So my first part of my method of my SOC is methodological. So at this point, I Googled it a couple of days ago. I couldn't see someone else who's written a creative piece attached to ultra realism as a methodology. So that would be a major going forward methodological SOC. It's really important to me, the sort of Marxist feminist configuration of my work. And that is subtly through everything, sometimes more subtly, sometimes less, but that is in all the exegesis and in all the artifact. I think one of the other things that is a significant contribution to knowledge is the structure of the work and the number of theories, the number of theoretical positions that are taken as one goes through the work, and that combination will be a unique combination which someone else would not have done. So as Tara pointed out, that is an ontological contribution to knowledge. And I'm not making a bold claim about that. I think that's more of a potential as it plays out and if the work is done well. So I think I feel very clear about my contributions to knowledge. And I think that's a strong point of my work, that I write on that in each chapter and that I'm very clear about what that is. What's next, very briefly, is I have divided up, have done backward mapping and divided up the rest of the work that I have to do. So I've given myself 2 months for a chapter of the novel and 2 months following for a chapter of the exegesis, and I will continue to do that until I'm finished. So I see myself progressing at a higher rate than I did do in the last year, and I think I feel very clear about who I am writing my PhD. And I don't think that I did, and I think that's a growth in terms of what have I done in the last year. I think I've understood things a lot more clearly. I have over 400 references, so I've chosen not to hit you with my references, but if anyone is watching this as a recording, this would be a place to pause and get a screenshot, and if you looked up those things, you would find plenty of information. Thank you all for listening, and I'm totally open to feedback.
Thank you, wonderful, Maive. So firstly, let's just thank Maive. She hurtled through that. Incredibly well done, Maive. Maive, can you release the screen so we can see everybody? That's tremendous. And colleagues, let's move to the assessors. And it is my great pleasure to see once more, it's been too long, my queen, Dr. Angela Jones. I love you like life itself. I'll be fascinated to see the comments and the questions that you'll ask our Maive. Batter up, Ange.
Hi, Tara. Yeah, it's been a long time, but thank you for having me. And Maive, thank you for having me on your assessor panel. As a creative writer myself, I very much enjoyed reading the excerpts from your novel, as well as your theoretical chapters. Absolutely fascinated with the sonic, well, back both psychogeography and the sonic chapter, and the intersections between the two chapters, as well as then your Jack 1975 excerpt, in terms of there's a lot of rhythm in that chapter. There's the sonic element there. There's obviously the psychogeography element there, and then Jack is the flaneur walking through King's Cross with a particular rhythm and a rhythm to the voice as well. You've captured that crime, the crime angle, the crime narrator. Love the choice of the second person. When I read your theoretical chapters first and your overview, and I was like, oh, second person, interesting choice. And I was like, I'm not sure if I was convinced by the choice when I read it in the in your overview, but then once I got to the chapter, nailed it. I really enjoyed that breaking of the fourth wall. I guess my question for you, because these are all comments, because I really did enjoy it. My question for you, given that it's I know you said you don't want to, I guess, frame it necessarily as creative-led or practice-led, but your examiners will want to know in terms of what you're doing, why you've done it. I've read through your confirmation of candidature documents as well. I did the whole lot. Definitely with the evocative, writing there. But my question is around your process of writing between your theoretical and your creative. So could you just, let me know what your process is around that?
Oh, and thank you for that. And I love your comments. Thank you so much for that. And also interesting about not being convinced on second person in the exegesis, but being convinced in the artifact. So I take that on board as well. That might mean the second person in the exegesis needs a bit of looking at. But anyway, I wonder whether maybe just double jumping, maybe whether I could cover this in an appendice, because something I didn't say was that the creative-led PhD really lends itself to appendixes where you've delved deeper into different things. And I really want to write what you're talking about, but we've had a sort of a lens towards a cultural PhD, and I think that's moved away from me looking at the writing practice. And the writing practice would normally be in the mitigating journal. And so I think I could put some in the mitigating journal, and I could also use that as an appendice in its own right to demonstrate that. So I really take that on board. And my actual process is that I did a lot of work on ultra realism in the first year where I wasn't writing much. I did write creatively then, but I was really working hard on the ultra realism and deviant leisure and social harm. So the three of them, and also I think I touched into claustropolitanism then as well, but I'm not sure. But anyway, at least those other three. So I'd done a lot of work on that intensively where I wrote my first article, and then I wrote, I think, at least 5,000 words that was the crime scenario. And then, so I've sort of written the novel in stops and starts, which we could also call it iteratively. But to me, it feels more like stops and starts. So, and then at some point I wrote I think I wrote the other 1,000 words just when we began, the other 5,000 more or less, just when we began the podcast, and they were really important in like lifting me out of a kind of a multiple block, and I changed supervisors to Tara at that time. So I think that was another time of like a burst. And then I'm deeply relieved to have finished sonics and psychogeography. So I've had another burst since then. But this time it's been a planned burst where I have intentionally immersed myself and not been reliant on anyone else to immerse me or to inspire me. I have gone, okay, what have I got to do to get the best from myself and to keep writing creatively in the 2-month chunks that I've allowed myself. And so I really want to, like, as opposed to what I've done before, I will be sticking to my schedule. And the biggest thing that I've found in 2024 was that consistency is everything. You know, the bursts are not everything, but consistency is. So have I somewhat answered your question there? So I would say...
you have. And I think what you've said, make sure you write that, not necessarily even in an appendices, make sure you write that in your introduction about that process, about that iterative process, about the burst. Because for me, when I read it, I felt very much like one was informing the other.
Yeah.
And that's, I've been told from my previous supervisors that it's something that's often missing when you've got the creative, you've got the artifact in there and the relationship to the thesis. I think yours has that really nice connection. And I think you want to celebrate that and celebrate it even more in your sonic chapters. There's so much there that's really, really interesting that's happening that I think isn't being done elsewhere. So I think, again, like acknowledging your other bits of contribution to knowledge. I'll stop talking, and if we've got time, I've got another just general comment I want to give to you.
Very well said, Ange. And of course, Ange, this really is, that's why you're the ideal assessor. This really is cultural studies does the novel. It's not the 1990s practice-led, practice-based. You know, it's not that rehearsing of creativity. It is a different modality. So, Ange, that's brilliant. Now, Suze, do you want to speak, or should I read your wonderful commentary? Suze, do you want to say hello? Susanna, darling, can you? It shows you're not muted. How you going? I'll give you one more go and then I'll read the question if we can't get Suze. Suze, you want to have one more go? Okay, I'll read it. So, Maive, this comes from Suze, who is a remarkable writer in multiple modes. She's very interested in the second person. And of course, it has a very unusual history from Henry Fielding Austen and very common in noir. She's absolutely right. So she has some questions and suggestions. The question is, have you identified the genre of crime writing that you're undertaking, and how does that operate in the exegesis? So, what are you using? The puzzle, procedural, noir, or satire? So what's the what genre are you using of the crime novel particularly? And I like that a lot. I think it's the puzzle, but you answer your own question, Maive.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. Well, we haven't had this conversation because it's been so research focused in a way, and so cultural studies. Yeah, Angela, I can see your comment down there. And I watch noir, like I watch everything, but I'm very screen oriented. So I know that it's very much about what would I like to read. So just an echo somewhere. Yeah, so
I'll fix it.
Am I echoing? Okay.
Oh, I've got it.
Yeah, so it's very much about what would I like to read. And I don't mean this with the ego that's potentially there, but I don't read lots of crime novels that are what I want to read. They are to the left or to the right emotionally for me, which is like complex, politically, all sorts of things. But I don't read what I want to read. So I do watch, though, what I want to watch. And so I would say that for me, I would immediately go, oh, you know, I would say it's noir, but that doesn't mean it isn't also puzzle. And I have interesting conversations with one of my daughters in particular about, she reads crime, about the clues that I'm throwing down. So, yeah, so I'm aware of that. It doesn't fit into what I think are the old styles of women writing crime. I want it to be a strong feminist detective, but I want her to be very 1975. And so that's really important to me. Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. And yeah, thank you, Susanna, very much.
Good on you, Susan. Very, very good on the second person, which is such a rare choice. And I really thank you. I'm going to grasp that comment that you've made there. Let's go to Dr. McRae. Leanne, this is very interesting. 1970s rule, sister. What have you got to say about this particular paradigm, noting your expertise in ultra realism and so many paradigms in this thesis?
Oh, thank you very much, Maive. That's lovely to catch up with your work again. Thank you for that. I want to start with multimodality, because this is a very, obviously you're very clear about situating this thesis as multimodal. And I just want to know, in your mind, how do you see the multimodality of the thesis being operationalized? So at the moment, I see that it's a presence. What is it going to do for your thesis? How is it going to action what you want to do in your thesis?
Wow. How is it going to operationalize and how it's going to action? I think a bit like you made the comment on the COC that sonics and sound and class was thematic and an element and kind of all through it. And then from that, we made that a chapter. So I did want to point that out, that the chapter sonics is an absolutely 110% relationship to your comment in the COC, because Tara and I and Jamie went off and we went, oh, okay, you know, and then the more we looked at it, the more there were sonics just everywhere. And it was helpful, although I realized actually when I watched that this morning, I didn't 100% feel that I'd addressed one of the questions that you raised about class and sound. So I will take that on board to go back to that, because it was a fascinating question. So yeah, operationalize. I guess my old style thinking of multimodality in a PhD would have been that, you know, maybe the artifact was a performance-based artifact that was where it was the sound, you know, where it was the performance or the theatre or the whatever. And I think what I'm learning to live with, and your comment will be important to us to discuss, but I think what I'm learning to live with is that my multimodality is fairly subtle. It's all around the place, but it's fairly subtle, rather than, you know, a performance or a theatre-based thing where I could clearly tick that box and go, oh, there it is, there's my multimodality. Yeah, so I haven't thought about that question. I think it's really interesting. Have you got an idea behind your question, Leanne?
I most certainly do.
Okay, hit me.
Well, if you are thinking about how you're going to deploy ultra realism,
yep,
obviously it's crucial to how you're activating the character, you know, your novel in your writing about, you know, crime and harm, etc.
Yep.
But in terms of a tool through which you can knit multimodality together, ultra realism, I would suspect, is a fairly good model,
yep.
potentially, because it does have this overarching thread to link and reach out to your creative artifact, but also to thread through the theory that you're trying to present as the framing agent for all of this. So potentially it would be useful for you to really look to the nuts and bolts of ultra realism, not just as an idea, but
Yep.
literally, how do the ultra realists do their work? How do
Yep.
they actually do it? And they do it in a multimodal manner.
Yep.
And that can be really helpful as a model for you to think about, in particular, how you're going to knit psychogeography and sonic work together, because you're really working through feelings in space,
Yep.
feelings in movement, and that feeling also in sound, and thinking about the relationship to not only sounds in space, but the internal voice.
Yep.
What that sounds like, what you're intending that to sound like when you're using the second person, when you're trying to break that wall. What does that sound like in I mean, obviously everyone's own subjective experience is, you know, theirs, but thinking about that relationship a little bit more, and it's going to help you, I think, at the moment, knit all of that together.
Okay, wow.
And help you to also thread class. And because I really like this idea that you have this rendering that you have of the stairs.
Yep.
Idea of this kind of physical barrier. And it made me kind of think about, can you be a flaneur in King's Cross?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can.
I don't know if you can either. I think, sorry. Yes, so much I want to say.
And just like in terms of the work of stairs.
Oh, the work of the stairs. Okay. Or the workers' stairs.
Well, and also the work on the body when you use stairs. And how that is something that you can think about in terms of the feeling of space and how we move through space and how that can be articulated and rendered.
Can I ask you, I love it. Can I ask you a question? I really, really deeply appreciate that you get that. For me, it's all feeling world. And for me, it is all feeling world. I'm just like feeling world all over the place. So that is absolutely like really getting the work. So I really appreciate that, Leanne. When you're thinking of the body and the body in these instances, do you have a theorist or even one or two theorists that you would go to begin that work on the body? Do you have something come to mind where you would go?
Yeah, you have to go old school firstly. You have to go back to Judith Butler probably.
And her new book too. So the Butler arc, the Grossberg arc, the Sassoon arc, and how they align and conflate. But also probably some Jeff Hearn work, because you need some masculinity work in there too, Leanne.
Yes. See, Tara was the better person to ask.
No, but also the new Mike Kimmel too. So Mike's career.
That's great.
Mike's career. Yeah.
Right. And I've not only written that down, but I will this time, instead of waiting so long out of maybe fear to going back and looking at the recording, I will be looking at the recording within a week, chunk down my fear and go, okay, I need the recording to really illuminate, because I used everything that people sent to me, but I didn't do that quick enough. And I think I had a fear of looking at what am I like in this zone.
So think about that. Think about how your fear has changed how you interact with spaces and times. And that that's something that you can use to not only manage your own process, but to put into your works, because the feeling needs to be theorized. The feeling needs to have a context, a framework, and an operationalized manner around it. And ultra realism is so helpful here, because they want to answer the question, why do people willfully harm others? Why do people willfully harm others? So that is very much a emotional trajectory.
And my personal question is, why do people willfully harm themselves?
Absolutely.
But can I also, before I cross to wonderful Ange, can I also say we all have a right to harm ourselves. We have a right to write our own ending. I'm much more interested when someone has such an ego that they believe besides harming themselves, they can reach out and harm others. I think that's the ultra realist protocol, which is very interesting to me. I also need to log on behalf of Suze that she's talked about Bakhtin, which is a brilliant, brilliant way of engaging with multimodality, #oldschool, and thinking about how ultra realists engage with or don't engage with hyper reality. I think, Suze, they are both two great critiques. Conscious of time, colleagues, let's go to Ange, and then I'll open it up for any colleagues going forward. And I see beautiful Laura in. Good morning, good afternoon, Laura. Lovely to see you. So Ange, take us through this.
This was just a more of a comment or a consideration, and back to the sonic, because clearly I loved it so much, my love of the sound, and I think it is something so important. And I agree with Leanne. What I was wanting more of was that knitting.
Okay.
I think that's really important about knitting that feeling, work through the theory. But there was a comment that you made, and I can't remember where you made it, about the audience being a mature aged audience, which I was intrigued with, because there is so much of a youth fascination with crime, particularly around podcasts and YouTube channels. Bailey Saren's Murder, Mystery and Makeup, Baking a Murder, Baking a Mystery. You've got all this work on podcasts that you've done over there. You're doing work on crime. You've got this focus on sonics. This was a missing part, I thought, that I wanted you to lean into and go, actually, your audience is far bigger than what you have allowed for. And I think, have a look at that. I can send you the links for them. More than happy.
Please.
Because I think that would help you to knit in this contemporary link and your contribution to knowledge, especially as you were thinking about making it an audio book, which I think you should do, because that's going to bring in that sound element again, your own narration. That would just next level would be sensational. So that was just my kind of final comments around that. I think don't do yourself a disservice and limit your audience, and go and take a look at, there's just that this world of true crime and podcasts, it's just phenomenal. And I think you can locate your PhD very timely. So that's my final
fantastic comment. And I just want to add to that, I have actually reviewed that. I forget where I said that. We'll find it in the next while, but I will change that, because I've talked with my daughter, who's in her early 30s, who reads a lot of crime. And although she hasn't told me about listening to crime, I'm very aware now that I'm pitching to two groups. So young women in particular who are in their 30s, and I've even changed the way that I'm putting the music in, so that they may not know the music I'm putting in, but I'm putting enough, contextualizing around the title or around whatever words I'm using, so that the 30-year-old woman can go, oh yeah, I know what kind of music she's talking about. I'm fine here. So I am looking at that.
I think with that, in the fiction, you don't need to do too much of the tell. You can just do the show. Like there's a fascination with music, youth know a lot of song. I think just put it in there, and they will get it.
They will look it up on YouTube themselves.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ange. That's terrific. I'm conscious of time. Now, I will open it up to the posse. Now, who would like to ask a question? I see beautiful Laura still with us. Laura, would you like to offer a question or a commentary? Because you were so engaged through that presentation. Have you got a question or a comment for Maive? Oh, Laura's ignoring me. Hi, Laura. Oh, Sound Angel, you're on mute, sweetness.
Oh, thank you. Yes, look, I have to say something. It's not much of a comment, actually, it's towards myself and the way that Maive gave me the opportunity to learn about this type of research, and which I was not very familiar with. And I mean, we spoke a lot about the use of the you, for example. At the very beginning, I think it was the first time we met, and I had read her draft, and I immediately found that the use of the you was very powerful. And so I think Maive was still in a dilemma of, you know, how to express herself and in this way. And I think we just clicked from there. And yes, it was a great opportunity. I mean, I've learned a lot. Yes.
Beautiful.
And another comment on her draft was especially for the sonics, the psychogeography. I told her something like, I can smell the place.
Yeah.
So I think that was quite powerful for me.
Laura, thank you so much for those commentaries. So valuable, and we'll carry that forward too. And the startling nature of the you and the second person, it is difficult to control. It takes a lot of intellectual rigor and discipline to control that second person, and Maive is doing that incredibly well. So can I firstly thank enormously Maive? Can we all just thank Maive incredibly for this? And I see firstly that Ange and Suze and Leanne, incredible analysis. Ange, you are just a light and love in our lives. You are an amazing human being. Suze has kept us all honest. I didn't think I'd be thinking about buck tin today, but there you go. You try and get away from the carnivalesque, and the carnivalesque joins you every day. But I see Professor Quinton has put his very handsome hand up. So, Jamie, what would you like to say before I close proceedings today?
I wanted to say, first of all, well done, Maive.
Thank you.
And to follow on from Laura's comment, and to sound like a broken 70s record with LSD dipped on it and stuff, I know we've talked about the importance of knowledge in the PhD. So while there's been all these tropes that have been talked about and so on, for me, if you think about knowledge and the development of knowledge and the transfer of knowledge, I just wanted to remind you something that Tara and I have talked about with you at length, which is make sure that you capture how your learning, your journey through the theories and your own learning journey, how that influences how you write, how you record your journal, and how you're thinking about the audience, right? So for me, some of the conversation here about psychogeography is about how you create psychogeography for the reader. And that involves the application of knowledge and the transfer of knowledge to the reader. That is part of the knowledge journey, which is the thing that matters in the PhD.
Cool. Thank you.
Very, very well said. And I saw Siobhan just quickly put her hand up and then dragged it away. Siobhan, were you putting your hand up in agreement, or I'd love you to ask a question?
No, I was actually trying to manage things on my small phone and I keep pressing the wrong button. So it was an accident.
Look, you gave me a level of excitement. Can I thank you so much for joining us? And did you enjoy that? Any commentary you'd like to offer to Maive while I've got you on your phone?
No, to be honest, I joined because I just there was so many themes and research areas that I just never even sort of heard of before, really. But just that the idea of a creative PhD is something I'm just, I'd been mulling over, and yeah, so it was just great to listen to the whole discussion about the process and putting together the chapters and everything. It was just a learning experience, really. Thank you for that.
Oh, well, we are thrilled that you joined us. And colleagues, thank you all so much for joining us, taking an hour and a half out of your day. We are so proud of Jess. We are so proud of Maive, and particularly for our assessor colleagues. I mean, they have done this work for nothing. They have read a huge chunk of material, for which we are incredibly grateful. So, Suze, you're legendary. Ange, darling, you are the light of our lives. It's so beautiful to see you, Doctor. And Leanne, you are an amazing human being. I'm sure all of us feel a hell of a lot smarter after this hour and a half. So thank you to my co-supervisors, and have a lovely afternoon. You are all wonderful. Kia ora. See you soon. Bye-bye, colleagues. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck, Maive.
Thank you.